Hi, my name is Sarah Holloway. What is your name?
My name is Everette Clark.
When and where were you born?
I was born in 1941 in South Carolina in Marlborough County, and the county seat there is Bennettsville.
How did you come to Marion?
Well, the way I ended up in Marion, after graduating from school, I was working for a department store, Moore's department store, and I traveled with them remodeling stores and having sales where they needed to go in and remodel a store, and then have a big sale after remodeling, or remodeling sale. And I was asked by the Moores, the owners, to come to Marion and spend a couple of weeks, because some things in their store here that was located on Main Street was not going, I think, the way they thought it should go, and they wanted me to just come and spend a couple of weeks here. And so I did that. I came up, and after the first week, I called Mr. Moore and said, you know, I don't think this is the place that I need to be. I'm going to go home, and I'll be home on Monday, and if you want me to go somewhere else, I will do that. And he said, no, you be in the store in Marion on Monday, and I will be there. So he came and asked me to take the store and run it a couple of weeks, and that he would be back. And a couple of weeks after that, he came back and asked me to take the store and manage it. And so I did that for about 3.5 years. When I originally came and was going to be here for 2 weeks.
What was Marion like 50 years ago?
Oh, that is a big question you have just asked me, and I'm going to talk about that for you. Marion, of course, was a small town, and it was unique in that when I came to Marion, the corporate limits was very small, and at that time we had no shopping centers, no strip centers. Everything was downtown, and everybody came downtown to shop. So on the weekends, Fridays and Saturdays and other days, it was very busy. And the problem we had, the big problem that Marion had at that time, was parking. But I want to just mention some of the stores that were downtown. I think this would be of interest to some folks my age and maybe older. At that time, there was Belk's. We had a large Belk store. It was Belk Broom, actually, was the name that it went by. It was in the building where Suttle's Surveying is at today on Main Street. We also had Rose's, and that was a big store. And it was in the building where Macca is at. Of course, Moore's, the store that I managed. The Western Auto Store was there on Main Street. Young Shoes, Griffith Jewelry, which is still there today, but he's been there a long time. But this was 50 years ago, remember. Kelly Jewelry was in Marion, and Fuller's Jewelry was there. And then there was a store by the name of Robinson's Clothing, and I'll tell you about that later. Workman's Gift Shop, the Bargain Store. It was a very nice lady shop. Marguerite Shop was down there. There were a number of furniture stores. Rice and White Furniture, Smith Furniture, Lockridge Furniture. Lockridge is still there today, same location. Perlman's had a store here. Of course, they were from Asheville. Lovin Furniture, that's one that many people won't remember, but Mr. Lovin had a really nice store, and there was Shuford Furniture Store downtown. And then there were hardwares, Jemerson Hardware, Bergen Hardware, and McDowell Hardware, and there was a paint and glass store, Googe, on South Main Street. We had a number of drugstores. We didn't have like we know today, like CVS and Rite Aid and those, but Tainer's Drugstore. They were located where Kello pawn shop is at today. Service pharmacy, Rexall. We had a Rexall pharmacy, and that was Mr. Jim Evans ran that store. We had Streetman Drugs, and Mr. Streetman was the mayor at the time I came to town. And Marion Pharmacy was just starting up. It was new, starting that store. Also on Main Street, we had Westmoreland and Hawkins Funeral Home, and we had McCall Funeral Home. There were a lot of other stores like Roseland Florist, which is still down there. We had Hogan Florist, and there were a number of other florists that was on Main Street. One of the things that was real interesting was how many gas stations we had. Back then they referred to them, I think, as filling stations. But some of the old buildings are still there, and you can identify where there was a filling station or a gas station was at. When I came to Marion, I-40 had opened up, I think, in 1959, if I remember correctly, is when it was opened for this county. And, of course, we had Highway 70 and Highway 226 and 221, which we still have. But the thing was that Interstate 40 took a lot of the traffic out of Marion 70 going through the county from Burke County over to Buncombe County. So it was now on I-40. But when you were to get to Old Fort and get to the top of the mountain, you didn't have Interstate 40 anymore. You back on 70 and going to Asheville, you had to go through Swannanoa, Black Mountain, Swannanoa, and into Asheville. So that kept a lot of people in Marion to shop. But again, we didn't have any shopping centers out, so everything was really concentrated downtown. And so on the weekends especially, the sidewalks, it would look sort of like maybe in New York today, because there was so many people on the street, because they all came. And we had people coming from other counties, like from Spruce Pine. They would come down to Marion because we had more variety, more stores, and even people out of Rutherford County and other places would come to Marion to shop. So Marion was really a center of trade, and it was concentrated. Might mention this also, the banks. We had First Union National Bank, Marion Bank and Trust, and there was McDowell Building and Lawn Association, and First Federal Savings and Loan that were available. And they were open until noon on Saturdays. So after then, and hardly anything was open on Sunday. We had blue laws back then. You couldn't. Everything was dry. There was no alcohol sold, and the grocery stores were closed on Sundays, so you had to buy everything weekdays because you just couldn't get it on the weekends.
What were the stores like?
Well, the stores were very nice, I thought, at the time, and they carried quality merchandise. You could hardly find anything that was made outside of this country. A lot of things started coming in from Japan and other places, but everything was American made, and you could find really high quality merchandise in Marion at that time. We had some very fine ladies shops and shoes and other type clothing. Men's clothing, that's back when men wore suits, sport coats and ties, and so we had some really nice garments that you could buy at that time. Coming back to the Robinson's clothing store, as I mentioned earlier, after managing Moore's for about 3.5 years, Robinson's clothing store was for sale, and that belonged to Mrs. Essie Robinson. And my wife and I decided that would be a good fit for us, so we decided to purchase Robinson's clothing store. This was in 1966, actually, October. And so I started buying and selling merchandise of our own at Robinson's, and I ran that for 21 years. And that was 21 really good years. And a lot of people worked for me during that period of time, especially young people that were in high school and college. And a lot of those people went on to be doctors and lawyers and even a principal at the high school that, and if he hears this, he'll know who that is. But a lot of the teachers at the high school, they're now retired, some of them are, that worked for me years ago. But it was a very good experience. And then after the big box stores came along, things began to deteriorate somewhat with my store. And so we decided to close that up in 1987. And before that, I had acquired a real estate license. So I started selling some real estate and transitioned into real estate, a real estate broker, and then an appraiser's license. And so I have, in the last, I guess, close to 30 years, done real estate and appraising, and now just a real estate broker.
How did you get into serving with the government?
In I think it was 1971, Mayor Albert Neal died in office. And Mr. Jim Seegers, he was on city council and he was mayor pro tem. I had never thought about running for public office, really. Had no desire to serve. But when the mayor passed away and Mr. Seegers became mayor, he was mayor pro tem, so he moved up automatically. Mr. Seegers came and asked me several times if I would fill an unexpired term, his unexpired term on council, because he had moved up. And if I recall correctly, it was about a year and a half, his unexpired term. Well, he came and talked to me several times, and I said, no, I don't think so. I just didn't have a desire at that time to serve in a public office. However, after numerous times, and he encouraged me to accept that, I agreed. And I was appointed by the city council to fill an unexpired term, and I was sworn in office. It was around the 1st of April, 1972. And long story short, I've been serving ever since. But during that period of time, I've served 24 years as mayor, and I have served the rest of that time as a council member. But before becoming mayor, I served about 13 and a half years, and in 1985 I ran for mayor and served until 2009, I think it's 24 years. And then I ran for council and then went back on council. But that's how I got involved with local government, first being appointed.
Mr. Clark, thank you for letting me interview you today.